we go. Ready? NBC News, ABC News, and CNN have all called Pennsylvania for Donald Trump. This election is over. Donald Trump is going to be the 47th president of the United States.
Incredible political thing. Look what happened. Is this crazy?
Terrible night for women, for children, for the hundreds of thousands of hardworking immigrants who make this country go, for healthcare, for our climate.
Well, I don't think Donald Trump's a good person. I'm only basing that on everything I've ever been taught about what makes someone good or bad.
I've gotten to a point where I don't trust government, Cenk. Whether it's a Democrat in charge or a Republican in charge, I don't trust government.
You know a man means business when he's got a blazer and a tie. You know that. Don't watch the fact that I'm not wearing a shirt though. Don't make that make sense.
As long as Donald Trump can pull his pants down and shake his around and make people look at him and pay attention to him, that's all he cares about. It's an embarrassment. He has not a shred of dignity.
By now, everyone probably knows that the president-elect is Donald J. Trump. He defeated Kamala Harris, who was the former VP under Joe Biden's presidency.
Dealing with everything we have to do with,
The real question we're going to ask ourselves is, what difference does it make? And is there any change that they could even make? Well, to that previous question, not a damn thing. You do hear throughout the talking points, whether that's the left or the right, whether that's people who center themselves.
This election is the last chance to preserve democracy in America. Mark my words.
That this is an election for your democracy. You are voting for the right for democracy, which is a marketing ploy.
I'm tired of you saying it's moral versus immoral. And Kevin Durant is on one side and all the immoral are on the other. And in the process of you cloaking yourself in this clear morality that anyone that has even the slightest bit of nuance of disagreement with you is somehow evil. In the process of you doing this preening, this peacocking on TV.
People use this as a way to garner emotions, stir palpable feelings and fears, in fact, of loss of freedom, loss of rights, and a vote will change that. When in reality, we've probably lost most of our rights the more and more corporations and elites have infested politicians with their money, tying them to them. No, in fact, severing themselves to them in a way in which we can't even fully comprehend at this present moment in time.
I think that our election process is still democratic.
Yes and no. You want to run for office, can you? You can. You got a certain number of signatures. But if you're going to win, and I have 10 times more money than you do, I will beat you 95% of the time. So I use the term oligarchy. An oligarchy is a society where small numbers of very wealthy people control the economic and political life of the country. I think we are moving rapidly in that direction.
To me, it feels like an almost privatized communism in a way.
Right. That's a very good point.
Do I think Trump is better than Harris? I'm not sure. I don't know if it even makes a difference. However, what are the contributing factors that led to Kamala Harris's downfall?
Campaigning with a neocon. Campaigning with Liz Cheney, a deeply unpopular politician who was voted out of her congressional seat because even the Republican Party has changed in regard to their views on neoconservatism. You know, the big cover-up in regard to Biden's mental health, that was a giant mistake by the Democratic Party, and they're suffering consequences for that. We have to be real about this, guys. We just do. And you know, magical thinking isn't going to help the Democratic Party. They're not going to win with magical thinking. They have to come to terms with the mistakes that they've made. And
yes, she's a little cringy. She comes across a little bit sometimes as if she's just talking off talking points. She repeats herself countless times, unburdened by what has been.
Can be and be unburdened by what has been, you know? What can be unburdened by what has been. There are those who are unable to see what can be, but there are many more who are able to see what can be unburdened by what has been.
All of that. It's crazy. She has said it so many times. The one about the coconut tree.
I don't know what's wrong with you young people. You think you just fell out of a coconut tree?
Is as cringy as it comes. However, Trump is quite similar, he's quite the same, he regurgitates the same insults that he gave to not only Biden, but to Hillary, now to her.
Joe Biden is a failed president. She was a failed vice president, the worst president in the history, the worst vice president in history. He is incompetent. She's incompetent. She can't talk. She can't talk. Low IQ. He's a low IQ individual. She happens to be really a low IQ individual. She really does. She has a very low IQ.
There is an element of sexism that is involved. Of course, they try to kind of tether and tear apart the black community, saying that black men won't vote for Kamala Harris, which has been proven to be dispelled. I think it's about 1% of black men voted more for Trump than they did for Kamala Harris, and it was still a vast majority. From this statistic, which I haven't been able to fully cross-reference, but still a vast majority of black men that voted for them. What happened is that it seems that Trump has won the Latino vote. So there was a lot of, I'll call it gaslighting that went involved.
On this point about young men though, you say we're past the persuasion stage. I wish that were true. On the doors in Philadelphia, on the doors in Detroit, people are still in the fight to persuade young black men to come out. And the actual message that's working on the doors is Kamala Harris wants to lift you up, Donald Trump wants to lock you up. On this point about young men though, you say we're past the persuasion stage. I wish that were true. On the doors in Philadelphia, on the doors in Detroit, people are still in the fight to persuade young black men to come out. And the actual message that's working on the doors is Kamala Harris wants to lift you up, Donald Trump wants to lock you up.
But there was the biggest gaslighting really happened with
making sure that we're able to make every single solitary person eligible for what I've been able to do with the COVID, excuse me, with dealing with everything we have to do with, look, if we finally beat Medicare, and I'm going to continue to move until we get the total ban on the total initiative relative to what we're going to do with more Border Patrol and more asylum officers.
President Trump?
I really don't know what he said at the end of that sentence. I don't think he knows what he said either. Look,
what I did, when, for example, he wants to get rid of the ability of Medicare us to be able to negotiate drug pricing with the big pharma companies, dealing with the segregation that exists among these corporations that collude to keep people out of their houses. I made sure every company in the world, every pharmaceutical company, cannot have to pay them. And by the way,
do you think he's ready to serve as president until he's 86?
First of all, let me say that our president has been an extraordinary leader who has accomplished things that previous presidents hoped and dreamed and promised they would do and did not achieve. So yes, I see him every day. A substantial amount of time we spend together is in the Oval Office, where I see how his ability to understand issues and weave through complex issues in a way that no one else can to make smart and important decisions on behalf of the American people have played out.
The best way forward is to pass the torch to a new generation. It's the best way to unite our nation. You know, there is a time and a place for long years of experience in public life. There's also a time and a place for new voices, fresh voices, yes, younger voices.
The Joe Biden incident. Joe Biden is sick. He may not even be with us, potentially, just a rumor, allegedly. I'm just speaking out what people are saying out there. Do not ruin my channel. But Joe Biden is clearly unwell, clearly not fully fit. And there was gaslighting from the not only Democratic Party, not only some left-wing establishments, but Kamala Harris herself. And she lost complete and utter trustworthiness with the audience while defending him. Every time she defended Joe Biden, and then she tried to do a mea culpa when she became the president, well, running for presidency, it was nothing short of quite frankly embarrassing, and it built up the credibility that was in Donald Trump as well. Also, the fact that Donald Trump got shot, it built up a lot of sympathy and made him feel like a martyr amongst men. A lot of this came down to extremist rhetoric, calling him Hitler, calling him a fascist. There's many things about Donald Trump that none of us like. There's many things about Donald Trump that is problematic, but let's just call it what it is. He's not Hitler.
An unsettling question has been dominating the US presidential race. Is Donald Trump a fascist, with some comparing him to Nazi Adolf Hitler?
Quoted General Milley calling Donald Trump a fascist. You yourself have not used that word to describe him. Let me ask you tonight, do you think Donald Trump is a fascist?
Yes, I do.
He is in all ways exactly like Mussolini and Adolf Hitler. They will give you a list of 6 to 12 characteristics of fascist movements, encompassing the relationship between the government and businesses, the hearkening back to a mythological earlier period in that nation's history, the trying to mobilize some sort of like prior masculinity, the hyper focus on cleanliness and the demonization of sexual perversion, as you pointed out, the xenophobia and the constant focus on both outsiders as well as the enemies within that are taking down society. In some cases, it's supposed to be Jewish people. In some cases, it's supposed to be gay people. There's always a focus on that.
And so maybe he doesn't do those things. Cross your fingers that he doesn't mean it when he says all those fascist things. But if you ask me what would a fascist say, those are the things that I would pick.
Yeah.
You know, I'm like, if he's Hitler, why didn't he do Hitler things when he was president for 4 years?
Right.
He's not a fascist. The only thing that's fascist about Donald Trump is the system in which he is in. He is not Hitler. It is way too extreme. It is ridiculous. And the fact that the mainstream media and some YouTubers as well tried in some way to make this a credent argument was embarrassing. And it goes and harpens to the overall argument of this video is, does this even mean anything? Are we all under one massive genjutsu, one massive gaslighting trick that is fooling us that anywhere between Trump and Trump and Kamala Harris, that it will make a difference? I don't believe so. However, there are factors why she lost more. The purity test, that this virtue signaling that the left do, if you're not for trans right, you're homophobic and you're a bad person. If you don't vote for Kamala Harris, you're a racist and a sexist. Yes, sexism played a massive role in not only Kamala Harris's defeat, but Hillary's too. But on top of that, let's just call it what it is. The way in which the Democratic Party and the media are using identity politics to some way buy our good nature, buy our not only eyes, attention, but our own money sometimes to garner to their product, whatever they're shilling us, is embarrassing. It's becoming see-through. And I believe that's most of the reason why Trump won. Hence, Trump has only lost to an old white male who was potentially senile.
Kamala administration has been disgusting. I think that they've held up this operation. And yeah, I'm voting for Israel on my money. Period. I'm not in the racial politics. I don't give a f.
So you're voting for Trump?
There is a clear divide that is going on in America, that they are repelling identity politics. They are repelling the pushing of wokeism. And there are some good that come from wokeism, and there's some terrible things that come from it too. And one of the worst is the purity test that is going on.
I think the things we want are just pretty basic. It's like we want individual liberties, and we want opportunity. We want America to remain the land of freedom and opportunity. So we maximize people's personal freedom. The government can't barge into your house and kill your fucking pet. That's fucked up. And that you succeed as a function of your hard work and talent, not anything else. Not race, religion, sex, doesn't matter.
Yes.
The basic stuff, and then
done such a job of painting Trump as a monster. They've taken the worst things that he's ever said and he's not a perfect person, but guess what? No one's a perfect person. They don't exist. This purity test, like if Obama was a perfect person, he wouldn't be lying on stage about that very fine people hoax.
Probably from my talking point so far, you probably feel like I was a Trump supporter.
He loves Trump. He loves Trump.
He's been a longtime friend of mine, so.
I'm kind of mocking them by wearing a tie with a shirt, well, a t-shirt, and a blazer. It makes no sense, because that's how I feel about politics. But the truth is, Trump is just as problematic. His rhetoric, at the very least, is inciting xenophobia,
have done to our country by allowing these millions and millions of people to come into our country, and look at what's happening to the towns all over the United States. And a lot of towns don't want to talk. It's not going to be Aurora or Springfield. A lot of towns don't want to talk about it because they're so embarrassed by it. In Springfield, they're eating the dogs, the people that came in. They're eating the cats. They're eating the pets of the people that live there.
Racism, sexism.
And as far as the abortion ban, no, I'm not in favor of abortion ban, but it doesn't matter because this issue has now been taken over by the states.
And a lot of male chauvinistic toxic masculinity that is going on. Now, I'm someone that repels sometimes the term toxic masculinity. I think the media overuse it in a way where it removes its context, like the way they use fascism against Trump. However, Trump is literally using those talking points. Now, the problem is that by this point, we realize that he doesn't do any of that. He works for the elites. He's in bed with the elites.
Donald Trump doesn't have some people he's for, some people he's against. He's not for anyone.
And not only him, but so is Kamala Harris, to the point that she has Les Cheney and Dick Cheney supporting her, who we now know are warmongers. They profit off war.
My dad believes, and he's said publicly, that there's never been an individual in our country who is as grave a threat to our democracy as Donald Trump is.
The former vice president confirmed the endorsement with a statement on X.
They're war profiteers, they're in bed with ExxonMobil, all these weapon manufacturers that benefit from war. And she in no shape or form tried to defend that, or even some way tried to push against that. It is wild. And I really want to make this point so clear that they are both in bed with the financial elites, the deep state. There was no difference, okay? This whole fight for democracy thing, like I said earlier, was marketing.
Against intelligence agencies and their complete power over America. And now if you look at the last two presidents, you will really see no change in focus. Donald Trump invoked Drain the Swamp, which was intended to eliminate corruption within the government. However, while in power, his administration saw more influence from corporate America and extreme defense spending. And it's been no better with Biden and probably won't get better for a very long time.
Yes, Trump lies.
Job. He doesn't want to do it. He's become like a Palestinian, but they don't like him because he's a very bad Palestinian. He's a weak one.
Uncontrollably. Yes, there isn't the element why some people say there was a fight for democracy is because when he lost in 2020, he incited, said words to effect that led to the march to the Capitol, those rioters storming the Capitol. He didn't indirectly invoke violence. It's very important to say that, but in some shape or form, perhaps he was inciting it. Sometimes his verbiage and his language and his vernacular in discussing and describing things is so colorful, it can provoke some aspects of violence. I'm not denying that Trump has that to him. Some of the things he says about the enemy within.
Election day, I think the bigger problem are the people from within. We have some very bad people. We have some sick people, radical left lunatics. And I think they're and it should be very easily handled by, if necessary, by National Guard, or if really necessary, by the military, because they can't let that happen.
How are you going to guard against the bureaucrats undermining you?
Well, they're going to undermine. Well, I always say so. We have two enemies. We have the outside enemy, and then we have the enemy from within.
Very problematic. It can stoke violence. Hence why people say, fight for your democracy. I get it. But Trump is for the elites. He doesn't make any radical changes, really. Neither does Kamala Harris. And the whole media narrative about him being a fascist, a fight for democracy, I keep saying it, but it was just a load of lies.
None of it's true. None of it's true. It's BS. They made it up. They lie.
I do believe ultimately this election came down to one thing, and it was the person you like the most. Was it the establishment politician who seems to be a puppet, who constantly repeats himself saying cringy lines?
But there are many more who are able to see what can be unburdened by what has been. Remember Venn diagrams, those three.
Or the orange guy who's been on TV for years, who's really good at marketing himself. He's quite funny at times. if not in a dorky kind of goofy kind of drunk kind of my uncle doesn't mean it kind of way.
Excuse me, you dropped to your knees.
Yes.
Begged to do this.
It must be a pretty picture you dropped into your
John
knees.
and Dennis thought I should be. Omarosa said me.
And that's what the election ultimately came down to, if we're being honest. It was who you like the most. And if you think that's a problem with politics, I'm telling you, that's what politics is in 2024. It's not about policy, it's about likability and who can garner enough money and ads to promote themselves. This time it was Trump, last time it was Joe Biden. In 2016, it was actually a time, you know, the male one, the orange male. And I don't mean to make this too much of a rant about American politics. As a Brit, it's not that much better here. They're more or less, again, same old cop and copy of each other. Anyone with radical ideas is seen as too radical and pushed out and seen as a threat to democracy for real. And the problem is that we do need a threat to democracy.
Whether it's a Democrat in charge or a Republican in charge, I don't trust government. So in that analysis that we did and talked about, one of the tax breaks that came with Trump's tax cuts for the rich, if he extends it, it would lead to $700 billion in lost revenue for the federal government. So what? So what? What does the federal government do with our money? $700 billion for what? For more aid to other countries in the form of weaponry? Is that what it is? Which is basically just redistributing our money from taxpayers to weapons contractors and defense contractors.
Yeah, so
it bothers me. I can't sit here and talk about like, oh, the federal government needs more revenue when I've seen what they do with our revenue, Cenk.
Things are getting slightly worse, not terribly worse, but they're getting slightly worse. People are affording less. People are unable to buy homes, unable to do shopping at the rate and the level they once were able to. Their overall anxiety about what's going on around the world has increased. And some of my friends say when I mention this that I'm stating the obvious, and I agree, I am stating the obvious. But the problem is that people vote against the obvious. People contribute to systems that are in polar opposite to what is opposite, what is going on, to the reality. So the obvious, even when I state it, feels profound sometimes, well, to me, because people are doing the opposite of what is obvious. It's frustrating, it's difficult. And I just want to conclude this point. In order for elections to mean anything, and again, it is completely my opinion, in order for elections to mean anything, have meaning, and to be able to make inroads, we kind of need to change democracy. In a strange way, the term threat to democracy is appealing because democracy has failed us all, has it not? Has capitalism not failed us? Why is it that billion, sometimes trillion-dollar corporations don't pay taxes, but we do? Again, sounds like I'm stating the obvious, but people vote for things that are against the obvious. We are doing things that are detrimental to ourselves. And I ask for calm in this moment from everyone involved.
Internet, but I'm not even about to pretend like this some shit that I'm finna be embarrassed about, bro. Like, I ain't never been so devastated behind an election. And it's just like, when you a black woman surrounded by black men and they say all this shit like, oh, he's not that bad and oh, he just hates everyone, bro. Like, it was my brother homeboy I was talking to the other day, a black man, and I found out that he's a Trump supporter. I'm like, he does not like you. And he was like, oh no, he just don't like everybody. What? So that's a good candidate for you? Someone who just hates everybody? Like, what? And I'm crying in my room this morning. My brother gonna come up in here and say, what's wrong with you? Like, he can't think of one possible reason why I would be upset right now, bro. These are so they live on another planet. And it's because none of this shit affects men. That's why. Men don't give a fuck about nothing that don't directly affect them. If it does not directly affect men, they do not give a fuck. And motherfuckers hating women is the whole reason he got elected in the first place.
Don't get into rhetoric into why Kamala's better than Trump. Don't allow the culture wars, the sex wars, the identity politics wars to divide us too much. The truth lays somewhere in the middle. The truth about transgenderism, the truth about affirmative action, the truth about reproductive rights. Sorry, that was my alarm telling me that I need to end the show. But the truth about all this stuff lays somewhere in the middle. And a rational, calming place is where we need to be in order to find it. Both these politicians, both these parties are puppets. To the point, Trump bragged that he used to be a puppet master. Kamala Harris and the Democratic Party said that they need to garner more money in order to beat Trump next time. That is tone deaf. Completely tone deaf. If we want true change, we need a threat to our democracy. We need to change the way we look at the system. The two-party system has failed the USA, it's failed the UK, and it's going to continue to fail us until we make radical changes. The presidents themselves have said this.
We recognize the imperative need for this development, yet we must not fail to comprehend its grave implications. Our toil, resources, and livelihood are all involved. So is the very structure of our society.
He was referring to a well-oiled machine of military men in the defense industry where weapon manufacturers and equipment for the military directly influence foreign policies, as well as national defense policy, and unfortunately later generations didn't heed his warning at all.
In order for us to really want change, in order for us to really want something different, we're going to need to actually change, not this higgle-haggle left, right, center, right, Trump, Kamala. It's a pack of nonsense. I could say something ruder, but it's a pack of nonsense. I hope you enjoyed this show. It was a little ranty today, but I hope you enjoyed it. Please like, comment, share, and subscribe. Put into the comments what you feel the differences are between Kamala and Donald Trump. You put into the comments what you think I did wrong and I missed out. If I stated the obvious, please say. I don't mind. I'm here for your criticism and feedback and praise. Praise is also important. But I never wanted to go this long anyway, so, I'll see you next week. Peace.
Each of us lives dependent and bound by our individual knowledge and our awareness. All that is what we call reality. However, both knowledge and awareness are equivocal. One's reality might be another's illusion. We all live inside our own fantasies. Don't you think that's true,